I was 3 glasses deep into a Pinot Noir that cost more than my first car, sitting on a terrace in Provence that smelled like lavender and old money. The sun was doing that golden hour thing that Instagram influencers would kill their grandmothers for, and for the first time in 17 years, my blood pressure wasn't trying to punch a hole through my carotid artery. I was watching my daughter, Sarah, laugh at something her fiancé said, and I actually felt my shoulders drop. You know that feeling? When the invisible anvil you've been carrying around since the dot-com bubble burst finally hits the floor? Yeah, that. Then my phone buzzed. It wasn't a polite notification. It was the angry, insistent vibration of a device possessed by a demon with an MBA. I looked down. 17 Slack notifications, 2 voicemails, and then, screen lit up with a face that made me want to gargle broken glass. Bradley VP Ops. Bradley, the owner's son, a man who thought the cloud was actual water vapor and whose only qualification for running a data center was that he once set up a Roku without calling Geek Squad. I let it ring. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like freedom. The phone stopped, then it started again immediately. Mom, aren't you going to get that? Sarah asked, looking concerned. She knows the drill. She knows that mom is an operations engineer actually translates to mom is the only reason the internet doesn't melt in a 3-state radius. Nope, I said, popping a grape into my mouth. I'm on tow, paid time off. The O is the most important part. But the buzzing didn't stop. It was vibrating against the antique wrought iron table like an angry hornet. I sighed, the kind of heavy, soul-deep sigh that usually precedes a murder charge, and picked it up. Hello, Bradley, I said, my voice dead flat. Get back from Europe or you're fired. His voice cracked. He was screaming so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. I could hear the background noise, the distinct high-pitched whine of server fans ramping up to maximum RPM. It's a sound I know better than my own heartbeat. It's the sound of a system screaming for help. Bradley, I said, keeping my voice dangerously calm. I am 4,000 miles away. I am at my daughter's engagement party. I submitted this time off 6 months ago. Your father approved it. I don't care what Dad did. The dashboard is red. Everything is red. You need to log in and fix the flow rates or you're done. Pack your desk. Now, before I tell you how I systematically dismantled a multimillion-dollar company using nothing but silence and a secure shell protocol, do me a solid. Hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Seriously, it helps the algorithm, and since I might be legally unhireable after this story gets out, I could use the morale boost. Okay, back to the carnage. Bradley, I said, swirling my wine, I can't log in. What do you mean you can't? You have the laptop. I do, I admitted. But you revoked my admin privileges yesterday, remember? You said, and I quote, we need to pivot to a more agile, youth-oriented hierarchy. You gave my keys to that intern, Kyle, the one who thinks Python is a snake. Kyle is crying in the bathroom. Fix IT, I can't fix what I don't have access to, Brad. You wanted me out of the loop, I'm out of the loop. Then get on a plane. If you aren't here in 12 hours, you are terminated for cause. Insubordination, sabotage, the accusation hung in the air, mixing with the scent of lavender. Sabotage, he wanted to talk about sabotage. I looked at the vineyard. I looked at my daughter, who was looking at me with that please, don't work on vacation face. I thought about the last decade. The missed birthdays because a cooling loop sprung a leak at 3 a.m. The Christmas mornings spent on conference calls because a firmware update bricked the storage array. The fact that my hair was graying because I was the only thing standing between this company and a thermal meltdown. And this 26-year-old with a spray tan and a degree in business ethics was screaming at me like I was the help. Something inside me snapped, not a loud snap. A quiet metallic click like a lock engaging. Okay, Bradley, I said softly. Okay, what? You're coming back? No, I said. Okay, I'm fired. You want to terminate me? Consider it done. I just logged out of everything. Slack, email, the VPN, everything. Wait, what? You can't just, I just did. You have about 20 minutes before the data center cooling resets to its default 0 state. That's a safety feature I wrote to prevent unauthorized tampering. Since I'm no longer an employee, I can't authorize the override. Tell your dad to buy fire extinguishers. Good luck, Bradley. I hung up. I didn't just hang up, I powered the phone down. I dropped it into my purse like it was a loaded gun I just emptied. Sarah looked at me, eyes wide. Mom, is everything okay? I smiled. A real smile. The kind that shows teeth. Everything is perfect, sweetie. Pass the brie. But in my head, I was already counting down. 19 minutes and 45 seconds until the temperature inside Sector 4 hit 90 degrees. To understand why I was willing to let a server farm worth more than the GDP of a small island nation melt into slag, you have to understand Bradley. Bradley didn't walk into the office. He strutted. He was the CEO's son, fresh out of an MBA program that apparently taught him that disruption meant firing everyone who knows how the lights work. He showed up 3 months ago, wearing a suit that cost more than my annual mortgage payments and smelling like aggressive cologne and unearned confidence. The first meeting was a bloodbath. He gathered the entire operations team in the glass-walled conference room. I sat in the back, nursing my third coffee, holding a notepad that contained the intricate, fragile schematic of our custom cooling loops. Our data center is unique. It's an older facility, retrofitted with high-density blades that run hot, like cook an egg on the chassis hot. I had spent 10 years tweaking the HVAC logic, writing custom scripts that balanced airflow, humidity, and coolant pressure in a delicate dance. It wasn't standard, it was art. Bradley stood at the front, rejected a slide that just said Synergy 2.0 and pointed at me. Marissa, he said. He didn't ask my name, he'd just read it off the org chart. You're the lead systems engineer, right? Senior operations engineer, I corrected, and yes. Right, see, looking at your salary and your tenure, it feels very legacy. We're moving to a cloud-native, agile mindset. Having one person hold all the tribal knowledge, that's a bottleneck. It's bad scaling. It's not a bottleneck, I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. It's a specialized skill set. The cooling system in Sector 4 requires manual load balancing every 48 hours or the pressure valve sees. It's not something you can just automate with an off-the-shelf patch. He laughed. He actually laughed. A dismissive frat boy chuckle. Everything can be automated, Marissa. That's the problem with your generation. You like to tinker. You like job security. We're going to bring in TechFlow Solutions. They're a third-party vendor, dynamic, young. They'll handle the monitoring for half your cost. My blood ran cold. TechFlow, I knew them. They were a chop shop. They hired fresh grads, gave them a script, and paid them minimum wage to reboot servers when a light turned red. They wouldn't know a pressure valve from a bicycle pump. Bradley, I said, standing up. If you let TechFlow touch the HVAC logic, you will burn this building. I'm not being metaphorical. The thermal density in the racks is critical. If the coolant stops cycling for more than 30 minutes, the halon gas triggers. If the halon triggers, the servers shut down hard. You lose data, corrupt drives, millions in SLA penalties. He waved a hand, swatting away my concerns like a gnat. You're being dramatic. This is exactly why we need new blood. You're too attached. You're emotional. Emotional. I sat down. I didn't say another word for the rest of the meeting. I watched as he demoted my two best technicians. I watched as he signed the contract with TechFlow. I watched as he systematically stripped away my access to the budget, the hiring process, and finally, the strategic planning. But he made one mistake. He assumed that because I was legacy, I was stupid. He didn't know that I had hard-coded the cooling protocols myself. He didn't know that the automation he loved so much was actually a script running on my local terminal, authorizing the system to keep pushing coolant every time the pressure spiked. He wanted automation? Fine. The week before my vacation, I initiated what I call the nanny protocol. It's a soft lock sequence. Basically, the system checks for a specific digital token, my personal admin key, every 48 hours. If it sees the key, it assumes mom is home and everything is fine. It keeps the coolant flowing. It balances the load. If it doesn't see the key, it assumes a security breach. It assumes a hostile takeover. And to protect the hardware from unauthorized erratic tampering, it reverts every single setting to the factory default. The factory default for those chillers is off. I tried to warn him. I sent him an email titled Critical System Dependencies Do Not Ignore. He replied with TL. Doctor, enjoy your vacation, Marissa. We've got this. So I packed my bags, I packed my sunscreen, and I packed the only encrypted USB drive that contained the override codes. When he screamed at me on the phone, telling me I was fired, he didn't just hurt my feelings. He triggered the employment termination clause in my own head. I wasn't an employee anymore. Cool. Then my key was no longer authorized. The clock had started ticking the moment he said you're done. Back in Denver, 4,000 miles away from my Pinot Noir, the situation was deteriorating faster than a banana in a backpack. I can picture the scene perfectly because I've lived through the drills 100 times. But this wasn't a drill. The main operations center is a glass fishbowl in the center of the building. Usually, it's a hum of low-level activity, green lights on the wall-sized monitors, a gentle clatter of keyboards. But right now, it would be a disco of red warning strobes. Kyle, the intern who thought Python was a reptile, was likely hyperventilating into a paper bag. The TechFlow guys, let's call them Tweedledee and Tweedledumbess, were probably staring at the main dashboard, which was currently displaying a cascade of high-temp warnings for Sector 4, Rosa through F. Just reboot the controller. Bradley would be shouting, pacing back and forth in his Italian loafers, sweating through his dress shirt. Why aren't you rebooting it? We tried, sir. One of the TechFlow guys would stammer. We sent the kill signal to the HVAC master node. It refused the command. What do you mean it refused? It's a machine. It does what it's told. It says unauthorized user, the tech would say, pointing at the screen. We tried using the admin root password you gave us. It's not working. That's because the admin root password Bradley had was for the operating system. It wasn't for the firmware. I had separated those layers 5 years ago after a Russian botnet tried to hijack our thermostat to mine Bitcoin. The firmware layer, the brain that actually tells the valves to open and close, only listened to one user, Brennan Sue. Call her back. Bradley probably screamed, grabbing his phone again. Get her back on the line, but my phone was off. I was eating cheese. She's not answering, sir, Kyle would whisper. Then hack it. You guys are hackers, right? Bypass the firewall. Here's the funny thing about data centers. They are designed to keep people out, especially physical infrastructure controls. You can't just hack a localized cooling controller from the internet if the bridge is down. And the nanny protocol, it burns the bridge. It disables remote port access as a security measure. To fix this, someone had to physically go into the server room, plug a console cable into the maintenance port of the master chiller unit, and enter the 64-character encryption key. The key that was on a USB drive. In my purse, in France. Sir, another tech would pipe up, his voice trembling. The ambient temperature in row C just hit 85 degrees. The fans are running at 100%, but they're just pushing hot air around. The AC isn't blowing cold. Why isn't it blowing cold? The compressors have shut down. They're in safe mode. Safe mode? That sounds good. Safe is good. No, sir. Safe mode means they turn off to prevent the motor from exploding due to conflicting instructions. They're waiting for a manual reset. Bradley would be staring at the wall of screens. He'd see the client names blinking in red: banks, hospitals, logistics companies, real people with real money who were about to experience a very real outage. How long? Bradley would ask, the arrogance finally draining out of him, replaced by the cold, wet dread of a man realizing he just threw a grenade into his own lifeboat. At this rate of climb, the tech would check the graph. The thermal shutdown threshold for the storage arrays is 105 degrees. We're gaining a degree every 90 seconds. Bradley would do the math, or try to. 20 minutes, the tech would say. Maybe less. Open the doors, Bradley would scream. Open the server room doors, get fans, get ice, I don't care. And that is the exact moment the chaos would shift from technical difficulty to physical comedy. I imagined them running to the break room, grabbing bags of ice from the freezer, dragging box fans from the supply closet. It was like trying to put out a forest fire with a water pistol. I took another sip of wine. The sun was setting. It was getting chilly in Provence. I put on a cardigan. Back in Denver, things were just starting to heat up. If you've never stood inside a data center when the cooling fails, you can't appreciate the visceral horror of it. It's not just warm. It's an oppressive, industrial heat that feels heavy in your lungs. In Sector 4, the noise would be deafening. Every server has internal fans, tiny little plastic blades that spin at 10,000 RPM. When the sensors detect heat, they throttle up. Usually they run at 30% speed, a gentle hum. Now, thousands of them were screaming at 100% capacity, creating a sonic wall of white noise that vibrates in your teeth. It smells like burning dust, like ozone, like expensive electronics cooking in their own juices. The hot aisle behind the racks, where the exhaust vents out, would be lethal. We're talking 120 degrees and climbing. The cold aisle, which is supposed to be a crisp 65 degrees, would be creeping past 90. By now, the client tickets were rolling in. At first, it's just automated alerts, high latency, packet loss. Then the humans start calling. Hey, our database transaction time just went from 5 milliseconds to 5 seconds. We can't process credit card payments. That's the regional bank client. Our patient record system is timing out. We have doctors in the ER waiting for scans. That's the hospital network. We're losing $10,000 a minute. Fix it. That's the high-frequency trading firm. Bradley, trapped in the ops center, was watching his career evaporate. He was yelling at the tech flow lead, a guy named Jason who looked like he was 12. Do something, Bradley shrieked, slamming his hand on the desk. We're trying to reroute the load. Jason yelled back, but the virtualization manager is lagging. The CPUs are thermal throttling. They automatically slow down to prevent melting. Everything is crawling. Where are the manuals? Bradley demanded. Marissa must have left documentation. A binder, a wiki, something. Ah, the documentation. See, I did have documentation. I was meticulous. I had a shared folder called Disaster Recovery Protocols HVAC. It contains step-by-step guides, diagrams, and emergency override codes. Remember the Synergy 2.0 meeting? The one where Bradley said we needed to clean up the digital clutter. He had ordered IT to archive all non-active files older than 6 months to a deep storage tape drive to save server space. And since I hadn't had a catastrophic failure in 3 years, because I was doing my job, the system flagged my manuals as inactive. They were currently sitting on a magnetic tape in a warehouse in New Jersey. It might as well have been on the moon. The folder is empty. Kyle cried out, it's just memes. She has a folder of memes, that was true. I did keep a folder of Danny DeVito memes on the shared drive. I named it Essential Workflows to hide it. I chuckled thinking about them opening it in desperation, hoping for a schematic and finding a gif of Danny DeVito eating a hard-boiled egg. She sabotaged us, Bradley roared. This is criminal. It's not sabotage if you deleted the files, sir. Kyle said, finding a spine for the first time in his life. You signed the archive order last month. Bradley turned on him, eyes wild. Don't you quote policy to me. Get down there, open the floor tiles. Maybe there's a manual override valve. We don't know which valve is which, Jason shouted. There are 4 pipes: chilled water supply, return, condenser loop, and refrigerant. If we open the wrong one, you flood the room with glycol or vent high-pressure gas? I don't care. Guess. That is the sound of a man who has lost touch with reality. Guess is not a word you use when dealing with pressurized systems. Back in France, I ordered a dessert, a crème brûlée. I cracked the caramelized sugar with my spoon. Crack. The heat in Sector 4 hit 98 degrees. The first storage array, Drive Bank 12, began to blink amber. Drive failure imminent. The smell of burning plastic was getting stronger. I wasn't completely disconnected. That would be irresponsible. I had my personal laptop, a battered ThinkPad that weighed as much as a brick and could survive a nuclear blast. I tethered it to the shaky Wi-Fi of the Airbnb. I didn't log into the corporate VPN. Bradley had killed that access, but I didn't need the VPN to see the vitals. Years ago, I had installed a separate, cellular-based sensor array, just a few Raspberry Pis with temperature probes and a cheap 4G dongle hidden behind the cable trays. I called it the Canary. It was my sanity check. When the official dashboard said everything was fine but my gut said something was wrong, the Canary told me the truth. I pulled up the terminal. The text scrolled green against black matrix style. Sensor 1, row A, 102.4 degrees F. Sensor 2, row C, 106.1 degrees F. Sensor 3, HVAC intake, 110.0 degrees F. Status. Critical. It was beautiful in a horrifying way. It was the mathematical certainty of physics taking its revenge on incompetence. I took a screenshot. I debated letting it burn, truly. I sat there, listening to the crickets chirp, and thought about the $50,000 worth of stock options that were currently vesting. If the data center melted, that stock would be worth less than the napkin under my drink. But this wasn't about money anymore. This was about the principle. It was about the fact that for 15 years, I had been the invisible janitor, wiping the ass of the infrastructure, and the moment a guy in a suit showed up, I was legacy trash. I opened a secure, encrypted messaging app. I had a group chat with the old ops team, the guys Bradley had fired or demoted. Even Kyle was in it. Lurking, I uploaded a video file I had pre-recorded before I left. Just in case, I hit send. Back in the ops center, every screen on the local network flickered. I hadn't hacked the system. I had simply set a scheduled task on the internal message board to autoplay a specific file if my admin token hadn't been renewed by 4 p.m. on Friday. Bradley's monitor went black. Then, my face appeared. I was sitting in my living room in Denver, holding a mug that said I see dumb people. Hi team, the video Marissa said. Her voice was calm, almost bored. If you're seeing this, it means I'm not in the building and my admin token has expired. It also means the nanny protocol has initiated. On the screen, Bradley froze. The tech flow guys stopped running. By now, video Marissa continued, the cooling loops have reverted to factory defaults. That means off. You're probably seeing temps in the high 90s. Have exactly 20 minutes from the start of this video until the halon gas dumps. Once the halon dumps, the oxygen is sucked out of the room to starve a potential fire. Humans cannot breathe halon. Get out of the server room. I took a sip of coffee in the video. There is no password you can guess. There is no bypass. The encryption key is on a physical USB drive. If you don't have the drive, you don't have the cooling. Video Marissa leaned into the camera. Bradley, if you're watching this, you called me legacy. You said I was redundant. Well, consider this a redundancy check. You have 18 minutes to figure out how to cool a megawatt of heat without me, or you can call your dad. The screen went black. In France, I closed my laptop. The sun was gone now. The sky was a bruised purple. Mom, Sarah said, touching my arm, you're smiling like a supervillain. I'm just enjoying the retirement party, honey, I said. 15 minutes left. The CEO, let's call him Mr. Sterling, was not a tech guy. He was a money guy. He was the kind of guy who thought bandwidth was something you negotiated over a steak dinner. But he understood one thing very well, liability. He was currently on a yacht in the Mediterranean, ironically not that far from me, entertaining investors. His phone rang. It wasn't Bradley. Bradley was too terrified to call. It was the chief legal officer, Chloe Sterling. The CEO barked, answering on the second ring. I'm in the middle of a cigar. Sir, we have a situation at the main data center, the CLO said. The fire suppression system is pre-arming. What, is there a fire? No, sir, it's heat. The cooling is down, all of it. Well, fix it. Why are you calling me? Tell Bradley to kick the machine or whatever. Bradley fired the only person who knows how to fix it, sir. There was a silence on the line. The kind of silence that costs $10,000 a second. He did what? He terminated Marissa Brennan, effective immediately. He revoked her access. And apparently the system requires her physical authorization to run the custom cooling loops. Put Bradley on. Now. Back in the sweltering ops center, the phone on the conference table screamed. Bradley looked at it like it was a cobra. He picked it up with a shaking hand. D-Dad, you fired Marissa. The voice was so loud the tech flow guys heard it from across the room. She was insubordinate. She left the country. She's holding the system hostage. Bradley wailed, sounding exactly like the 6-year-old who broke a vase and blamed the cat. She didn't hold it hostage, you moron. Mr. Sterling roared. She built it. I kept her on the payroll at 20% above market rate because the insurance underwriters specifically listed her as a critical risk mitigation factor. Do you know what happens if the data center melts and our lead engineer was fired without cause by an unqualified supervisor? The insurance doesn't pay out. We are liable for everything. I didn't know, Bradley whimpered. Of course you didn't know. You didn't ask. You just walked in there swinging your dick around trying to impress the board. Dad, it's 108 degrees in the hot aisle. The drives are screaming. What do? You pray, Sterling said, and then you get me her number. I tried calling her. She won't pick up. That's because you're you. Text me her number. Right now. Mr. Sterling hung up. He looked at the Mediterranean Sea, dark and vast. He took a breath. He was a shark, and he recognized another shark. He knew he wasn't dealing with an employee anymore. He was dealing with a consultant, and consultants are expensive. In Pravos, my phone buzzed again. I looked at the ID. Richard Sterling. I didn't answer. Not yet. You see, in negotiations, the person who speaks first loses, but the person who answers the phone too quickly looks desperate. I let it go to voicemail. Then I waited 2 minutes. Then I sent a text. Hi, Richard. Currently at a family event. Reception is spotty. Is this urgent? Emmett was the most passive-aggressive text message in the history of telecommunications. His reply came 3 seconds later. Call me, name your price. I smiled. I took another sip of wine. Mom, Sarah said, you're doing the scary face again. Just wrapping up a contract negotiation, honey, I said. Almost done. We were down to 9 minutes. The ops center was no longer an office. It was a sauna filled with panic. Ambient temperature in the room had risen to 85 degrees just from the heat leaking through the server room doors. Inside the server room, it was an oven. Warning, thermal critical. Zone 4, shutdown imminent. The automated voice was calm, which made it worse. Can we just use portable AC units? Jason, the tech flow lead, yelled. He had stripped off his uniform shirt and was wearing a sweaty undershirt. We have 2 portable units, Kyle shouted back. It produced 12,000 BTUs of cooling. The server rack produces 400,000 BTUs. It's like spitting on a bonfire. Find the drive. She must have a backup drive here. Bradley was tearing apart my desk. He dumped my drawers on the floor. Pens, tampons, old stress balls, and a stash of emergency Snickers bars scattered everywhere. Found one? A tech yelled. He held up a USB stick he found taped under my monitor stand. Bradley snatched it. Plug it in, go, go, go. They ran to the console. They jammed the USB stick in. The screen flickered. Access denied. Biometric authentication required. It needs a fingerprint, the tech screamed. Whose fingerprint? Bradley demanded. Hers. It's encrypted to her hardware key. Bradley stared at the screen. He looked at his own thumb. He looked at the USB drive. For a second, I bet he considered cutting off my thumb, but I was in France, so the logistics were tricky. I pass it, we can't. It's military-grade encryption. If we guess wrong 3 times, it wipes the drive. We have to shut it down, Kyle said quietly. Bradley, we have to pull the plug. A hard shutdown? No. Bradley grabbed Kyle by the collar. If we do a hard shutdown, the client database is corrupt. The transactional logs won't write. We lose the data. If we lose the data, the lawsuits start tomorrow morning. We have to keep it running. If we keep it running. Hardware melts, Kyle pushed him back. Look, he pointed to the glass window looking into the server room. A white mist was forming near the ceiling. Is that smoke? Bradley whispered. It's coolant vapor, Kyle said, his voice trembling. The pressure valves have blown. The glycol is boiling off. If that hits a spark, we don't just lose the data. We lose the building. The fire alarm strobe lights began to flash. No sound yet, just the lights. The silent herald of the Halon dump. 7 minutes, Kyle said. Get everyone out. Now. Bradley slumped against the console. He slid down until he was sitting on the floor, surrounded by my old Snickers bars. He looked small. He looked like a boy wearing his daddy's suit. I'm ruined, he whispered. My phone buzzed again. Richard Sterling. I looked at the time. 7 minutes to meltdown. I picked up the phone. Hello, Richard, I said. Lovely evening for a chat. Fix it, Sterling snarled. I don't care what he did. Fix it? I can't, Richard. I'm fired. I'm just a tourist. If I touch your systems, that's a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I could go to federal prison. Bradley made that very clear. I am rehiring you, he shouted. Right now you are rehired. I don't want my old job back, I said, picking at a loose thread on the tablecloth. The management is terrible. The VP of Ops is a liability. He's gone, Sterling said instantly. I'm firing him. I'm moving him to the mailroom. No, the warehouse in Alaska. Good start, I said, but not enough. What do you want, Marissa? 20% raise, double vacation? I want a consulting contract, I said, external, independent. My rate is $500 an hour with a minimum retainer of 1 year paid upfront. Also, I want the title of interim CTO until you find someone who knows what a server actually looks like. And a full apology from Bradley, written, signed, and notarized, admitting to gross incompetence to be kept in my personal file in case you ever try to screw me on severance again. Done, Sterling said. I'll wire the retainer. Now fix it. Money first, Richard. You know how banks are. Wire transfer confirmation number. Then I type, you are extortionate, I'm essential. There's a difference. Supply and demand, Richard. Isn't that what you taught your son? Heard him fumbling with another phone. I heard him shouting at his banker. 4 minutes, I heard Kyle scream in the background of the other line. Sterling must have been patched into the ops room. Sent, Sterling yelled. Confirmation number 8809 Alpha Tango. It's in your account, $200,000. Now save my company. I checked my banking app. It spun for a second. Then green numbers appeared. Pleasure doing business with you, I said. I opened my laptop. Okay. I said to the air, let's turn down the heat. I didn't need the USB drive in Denver. That was a decoy, a something you have factor for the junior techs to chase. The real master key was a 4096-bit RSA token stored on my Ubuy key, which was currently plugged into my laptop in France. I opened the terminal. I connected to the satellite backdoor. User, Mbrennen Su, password, 2fa touch Ubuy key. Access granted. I typed one command. Sudo / etc / hvac / emergency override sh reset force. I hit enter. It took 3 seconds for the signal to bounce off a satellite, travel across the Atlantic, pierce the firewall of the Denver data center, and tell the master controller to wake the hell up. In Denver, the silence broke. The first sound was a heavy metallic thunk. That was the main compressor clutch engaging. Then, the roar. Not the high-pitched scream of the tiny server fans, but the deep, chest-rattling bass of the industrial chillers kicking in. It sounded like a jet engine starting up in a library. Cold air, blessed, freezing air, blasted out of the floor vents in the data center. It hit the 110-degree fog like a hammer. The temperature sensors on the wall flickered. 110 degrees Fahrenheit, 109 degrees Fahrenheit, 105 degrees Fahrenheit. The red strobe lights stopped flashing. Halon dump imminent warning vanished, replaced by a calm green text, system normalizing. Kyle slumped to the floor and started laughing hysterically. The tech flow guys looked like they had just seen a ghost. Bradley didn't laugh. He stared at the screen where a new message popped up, a message I had just typed. System restored. Current admin, M. Brennan, CTO. Bradley, please remove personal items from the premises. I closed the terminal window. I closed the laptop. Is it done? Sarah asked. The sun was fully down now, the stars coming out over the vineyard. It's done, I said, disaster averted. The internet lives to stream cat videos for another day. And the angry man, he's having a learning experience, I said. The next morning, the press release went out. Marissa Brennan appointed interim CTO, strategic restructuring of the operations department. Bradley was escorted out of the building by security. Rumor has it he's now managing a frozen yogurt stand in Dayton. I hope he remembers to check the freezer temps. I didn't go back for another 2 weeks. I took the full vacation. I drank the wine. I ate the cheese. When I finally returned to the office, my desk had been moved. I wasn't in the cubicle farm anymore. I had the corner office, the one with the view. And on my new mahogany desk, someone, probably Kyle, had left a small shrine. A framed picture of Danny DeVito and a bottle of sriracha. I sat down in my expensive ergonomic chair. I put on my noise-canceling headphones. I opened YouTube and searched for Danny DeVito eating an egg asmer. I took a sip of my coffee. The dashboard was all green. The cooling was holding steady at 65 degrees. I wasn't just the janitor anymore. I was the landlord. And the rent just went up. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit him.